Hello, my bookish friends. Welcome or welcome back. I'm Elizabeth, and this is Reading Riley, where we like to read Riley, not take ourselves too seriously, and have some fun with books. Today, we are going to be talking about everything I read in April. We are doing, scratch that. Nope, that's right. That's the correct month. We're doing an April wrap-up. Is that for real? Oh my god, we're doing an April wrap-up. I have a lot of books to go through, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I'm going to try to make this as quick as I can, but I read probably the most books I've ever read in 1 month this month, and I don't know why. I don't have an excuse. It just is what it is. I wasn't less busy. I guess I just haven't been keeping up as much with my podcasts and listening to music. So I read a lot. I've been doing a lot of research reading because I'm trying to curate some lists for y'all for future videos. So stay tuned for that. Listen, okay, let me give a disclaimer here. I carry the mail for a living. If you've just joined my channel, you may not know that. So I literally all day listen to audiobooks. I work usually 10 hours. I'm guaranteed 1 day a week where I get 8 hours. It's at least 50 hours of listening time in a week. No, 40 something hours of time that I can be listening to audiobooks. So I don't by any means want anyone to feel pressured to be reading this much. And it's not like a brag of mine, it's just what it is. And I just happen to be in a position where I can make that happen. So don't ever feel like you need to be reading more. I'm in a specific position where I can do that. So the first book, I'm just gonna tell you these in order of how I read them. The first book I read this month was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I gave this a 4-star. I really enjoyed it. It's got a 4.20 on Goodreads. Most people have probably heard of this book by now. It did really well. It's following this band called Daisy Jones and the Six throughout the 60s and 70s until they break up inevitably. And the way it's written is like sort of a documentary series where you're just getting basically dialogue from each of the characters as if they're being interviewed. You follow Daisy Jones separately, and she's this kind of vulnerable, she grew up wealthy, but she left her home and she kind of went out on the streets by herself, and she's just absolutely gorgeous. I feel like I have Daisy Jones vibes today, actually, with my like kind of 70s looking whatever this is. Daisy is unapologetically flawed. She does a lot of drugs. She gets very much into the scene, this rock and roll scene. It's very much Fleetwood Mac vibes. She does a song with the Six, which is a separate band. And they eventually, the record company, I think it is, as they're following them on their growth to success, and they eventually join teams, and the relationship between her and this other main singer from the Six is really what this whole story is about, but it's really not. I mean, that's a lie. It's about all of them and their points of view. One thing I really enjoyed that was discussed in this book was kind of the conversations, how they would have conversations through their music and how they would write their songs and never really say the things they were thinking, but that's the beauty of music and writing music, is that you can convey all these messages that you may never say out loud in another instance. I thought that was really cool. We're talking about human expression. It overall was a very heartwarming kind of found family type vibes, and the things we do for love and the things we give up to get what we want, and feminism. It really was kind of this like speculative take on life through the lens of this 1960s rock band. And the twist at the end was really good. I highly recommend this. Next, I read Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. I ended up giving this 3 stars. I know this is a really popular book, and I see what it was doing, and I see why other people love this book. Oof. I had to turn the AC off, and now I'm getting warm. This is a 4.25 on Goodreads, so. It's basically about this bank robbery gone wrong. This robber goes into a cashless bank because they are in this desperate situation where they are just trying to take care of their family and their kids. The story ends up talking about all the people that are involved in this and how their lives are intermingled. This talks about human nature and human connection, and the way Frederick Bachman wove their stories together was really a beautiful thing. If there's one thing that really interests me, it's that the idea that we cross paths with people in our lives and don't even know. Like, if we could keep track, if we had a tracker on our bodies and we could know every time we were like within 10 feet of the same person twice, saying you never know this person, but you just kind of like, you cross paths at the grocery store, or you do this and you never notice. I always wonder with people in my life, have I crossed their paths before and not known? I know that's a weird thing to think about, but I do think about that sometimes. This book kind of does that in a roundabout way. The reveals, however, came pretty early, and I felt like there was maybe about 45% of this book where I was just kind of bored. I don't want to say bored. It was really good. I did enjoy it. I don't think it's as hyped as people make it out to be. It wasn't mind-blowing, but it was very sweet and very sentimental and speculative in a way. Oh my gosh, I need to make this faster. There's so much to talk about. I read too much. I read too much. I've already been recording for 10 minutes? Oh my God. Okay. We're gonna try to speed through this. Next, I read Why the Last Man by Brian K. Vaughan, Pia Guerra, and Jose Marzan Jr. That's weird because on Goodreads, it says Goran Sudzuka instead of Jose Marzan Jr. So I don't know about that. But anyway, Stephen King blurbed this, the best graphic novel I've ever read. Wow, okay, Stephen King. This book is from the early aughts, this comic, and this is something that a friend suggested to me to try because I've been wanting to get into comics and see if it's something that I like, something that I can get into. I've never really ventured down that direction. I gave this a shot. We're following Yorick Brown and his companion monkey Ampersand in this kind of near future dystopia, I guess, where all this like strange plague has come and killed every living man, and there are only women left in the world, and except for Yorick. Kind of tropey and it's kind of cheesy, but I thought at the same time the story and the plot was really interesting and funny. I really enjoyed that. What I didn't know before about comics or realize that each frame is similar to when you're editing a movie or a video, where you can use cutting a frame in order to convey like humor, let's say. Just it gives you an extra creative element as far as how you're setting up each frame in the story, and I thought that was really cool because that's something you can't get from reading, I don't want to say regular books, but pictureless books. However, this did not age well, and there was a lot of language in here that made me really uncomfortable and kept taking me out of the story. I gave it 2 stars. It's got a 4.08 on Goodreads. I may have been a little bit harsh on it because I guess I read a lot of new releases, and I was just so shocked by the language. Yeah, it was icky. It was icky. There's that. I feel like this might be like one of those nostalgia things where if you got on the train when it came out, then great, but it's not, it just doesn't stand today. Next, I read Finlay, Donovan is Killing It. And that is by L. Cosimano. I think it's a relatively new novel. It's a thriller mystery, but it's more of like a comedic thriller mystery. And I took this as a suggestion from Gabby at Gabby Reads. Unfortunately, I didn't love it. I gave this 3 stars just because it wasn't my style. I think it was a really good book and I think other people will love it, but it just wasn't exactly for me. Stylistically, when I went into it as a thriller, I was expecting to be kind of scared and put off guard and all of these things that you typically expect going into a thriller, but with the kind of comedic aspect of it, it very much gave me this what I like to call the Ben Stiller factor, where it was like you have the straight guy and everybody else around you is like crazy and they're just like, what's happening? I'm just doing the best I can. That might be a little harsh, but like that's the vibe I got. We're following Finlay Donovan, and off the bat, she's a novelist. They said she wrote romances, which is another thing that didn't make sense because then she kept talking about how she was writing thrillers. So I don't get that. But she's having a really hard time. Her husband cheated on her and left her for like her boss or something, and he's trying to take the kids from her. And this does have a really nice discussion about motherhood and kind of taking it out of this box that we put it in, how you're supposed to be perfect. She's real sloppy, but it's all lighthearted. It's lighthearted murder, which is kind of a hard line to toe. You know what I mean? Finlay is talking to her agent. They're talking about a murder within the story that she's writing, and this woman overhears them and thinks that Finlay is an assassin or like a murder for hire person. Finlay accidentally agrees to killing her husband, and stuff goes crazy and shit hits the fan, and it gets wild from there. There is a like found family trope. It does have a satisfying ending. I like the meta aspect with the book within a book. And I liked the portrayal of motherhood, where it's kind of funny, but sometimes poignant and heartfelt. The overall tone of it just wasn't for me, although I think a lot of people will probably enjoy this. Okay, the next book I read this month was The Push by Ashley Audrain. This one I also gave 3 stars, which is going to be an unpopular opinion, a hot take, I can just tell, because people are absolutely loving this book. It has a 4.17 on Goodreads right now. We're following Blythe Connor, and she is, so this is it's supposed to be a mystery thriller, but here's the thing, I think this is what contributed to my not liking it as much, is that I went into this thinking that it was a mystery thriller, and what it really is more so is a family drama with like a touch of suspense. I wouldn't call it a thriller. I guess mystery, I guess it works as a mystery too. So Blythe has her daughter Violet, and she's struggling because she didn't have very good role models when she was growing up, and she just never thought she could be a good mom, but she really wants to try to. She gives birth to Violet, and she has no connection with her, and she doesn't understand like when's it gonna click in, this like motherhood thing that everyone talks about. I don't get it. It just never does, but she keeps trying and trying, but then she thinks like she's seeing things in her daughter that aren't right. She's wondering what's going on with that. Then she has her second child, which was her son, and immediately she feels those sensations that she thought she was gonna feel the first time and never did. So she's trying to work out why that is, and if it makes her a bad person and a bad mom, and then an event happens that changes the course of all of their lives. And from there, things start to unravel. This explores truth in general, and like knowing the truth. What is the truth of what actually happened, and how does that change? How does that shape the scope of your own world? It explores nature versus nurture. We talk about the idea of motherhood and what that should look like. I don't want to say too much more without giving this away. Oh, the title, the reason for the title, once you understand why it's named what it's named, is kind of haunting. Yeah, overall, like, I liked it. I just thought it was going to be more thrillery and less drama-y. Like, it didn't give me the creep factor that I wanted. Don't get me wrong, it's creepy, but I guess I'm looking for like a cheap thrill, like a scare, and this wasn't that. This is a deeper level than that, and so just on my entertainment level, it's not what I thought it was going into it. Keep that in mind. It is very popular. The next 3 I read for a reading vlog. I did an experiment with Goodreads. I will post that up top. So I'm gonna kind of just go over these 3 as quickly as I can, because if you want to hear a more in-depth description of those, you can go to my vlog. First one is The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. I gave this 3 stars. It has a 3.8 on Goodreads, and it's a Jane Eyre retelling. I enjoyed the Southern Gothic vibes. It was very fast-paced, which I liked, and it was very twisty. However, this is another one where I went into it with the wrong expectations, and because I knew the story of Jane Eyre, I was expecting the qualities of those characters to come through in this, and it was changed completely, so that disrupted my enjoyment of this. And then the writing style I just didn't quite click with. So that's all I'll say about that. The next one I read was The Thursday Murder Club. This is by Richard Osman, and it's amazing. This is following 4 septuagenarians. They're in their 70s. I think one of them is actually 80, and they're in this retirement village. So we're following Elizabeth, Joyce, Ibrahim, and Ron, and they are grown-up murderinos. I want to be them when I grow up. They just are so sweet and so charming. They get together every Thursday night and they solve old murder cases. until something happens in their immediate vicinity where they are dealing with an actual case that's happening and unfolding as they investigate it, and they entwine in with the police force and sneak their way in. They are saucy and they are funny and they are just the cutest group. I don't want to say cute because I don't want to like infantilize them, but it was so charming and lovely, and the mystery was great. So I highly recommend this for literally anyone. Steven Spielberg bought the rights for the movies. It's a trilogy. The second book's already out. Like, what more could you ask for? This is so good. I can't wait to read the second book. We also have a really awesome discussion around old age and societal subversion, and the idea of how these people are the older generation, but they are still so full of life, and I love that. Okay, next I read The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This one I gave 4 stars. On Goodreads it has 4.10. This is following Jude, who, when she was 7 years old, her parents were killed by a fairy, and then took her and her 2 sisters and swept them off to fairyland. Anyway, she's growing up in fairyland and she is so vulnerable, and she's tired of feeling weak because all of these fairies, and like, can you imagine like middle school and high school being a human with fairies and how hard that would be? Just being human is hard enough when you're that age, but like with fairies picking on you and playing tricks on you and just being very sinister, it would be very difficult. So she just wants to feel like she's in control of her life, and so she makes a deal with this prince. He puts a gesh on her, and so no fairies can fuck with her, basically. And in return, she has to spy for him, and then we get into the politics of this kingdom and how she kind of works her way up as a spy. I really liked it. There is kind of a romance with another prince, but it's not really a romance. It's just kind of like this tension, which I was saying in my last video I really enjoyed because there was a lot of tension there, and Holly Black also does a really great job with these morally great characters, but you like feel for them, you connect with them, but you understand the decisions they make when they're bad decisions too. Next, I need a break. This video is gonna be so long. I don't know about these bangs, y'all. I cut them when they were curly and now they're all crazy. Okay. The next book I read is a romance. It is Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne, who was the author of The Hating Game, which I really liked. This just came out on April 13th, and I gave it 4 stars. It was fun. It's got a 3.87 on Goodreads right now, but it's still early because that did just come out, so that's probably gonna fluctuate. So I have this romance. It's set at, this one is another retirement villa. We are following Ruthie, who works at this villa. She's in her mid-20s, but she's kind of perceived as much older. She's comfortable around these older tenants there, and she doesn't really care about what she looks like or her makeup. She kind of dresses like an old lady, and she's happy with that. And she's kind of an overcommitted. She's very structured. She's overcommitted. Like, this wasn't her dream, but this is where she ended up, and she works hard, and she wants to do the best she can. And then oppositionally, we have Teddy, whose father is the owner of this villa, and Teddy is kind of flighty and unattached. He's got this like Peter Pan thing going on where he just can't grow up. So in my opinion, this is kind of a reverse Act Your Age Eve Brown, right? But instead of Teddy is Eve, because he's the more like carefree, wild one. He's all like tatted up and he's got like infamous long silky hair, and ooh, that part was fun to just imagine. And then we have Ruthie, who is oh crap, what's the guy's name in Evie Brown? You guys know who I'm talking about. If you haven't read that yet, you need to read it. Act Your Age Eve Brown. Teddy's trying to be a tattoo artist, and his dad thinks that he can't commit to anything, so he sends him to this retirement villa to do odd jobs for these 2 ladies. Okay, so there's a group of endangered tortoises that are involved in this as well, and it's, you know, it's kind of your typical romance where they like meet each other. It's kind of a hate to love, opposites attract. they meet each other, they start to fall for each other, and then they have a big fight, and then they get back together at the end. So we're still following this outline of what romances typically do, but there's enough interest outside of that and enough quirks and world building, if you will, around that in order to give it that little extra bit of oomph that I really enjoyed. And there's also some mystery things in there, and there's a few ties that go from the beginning to the end that are really nicely wrapped up and unexpected. So I did think it was very smartly written and I enjoyed it. Okay, next I read Love, Lucy. This is the As Told by Autobiography by Lucille Ball. So what happened was she actually sat down and told her story to someone at the height of her career, and she didn't want to jinx it, so she didn't release it. And after she died, her kids were really sad because they never got that from her, and they ended up finding this manuscript in like a storage or in a lawyer's office or something like that. So they were able to make this book and release it in 1993 of her own life stories. And oh my God, this woman did so much. She's so incredible. She's so far ahead of her time. She's just glorious. I could go on and on about her for days, but I'm sure you know her from I Love Lucy, but God, she was in so many other movies and things that I need to watch. So I started making a list of things from this book as I was reading that I need to watch that she's also in. So if you're interested in that, let me know and I can share it with you. Oh, I don't rate nonfictions, but it was amazing. And it has a 4.24 on Goodreads. Next, I read I Found You by Lisa Jewell. This one is a thriller. I gave this 4 stars. It has a 3.96 on Goodreads. The only other book I've read by Lisa Jewell was The Family Upstairs. I also gave that 4 stars, so I have a good impression of her overall so far. This is also a dual timeline. Okay, so you have current time Alice Lake. She is this mom with 3 kids. She's had a little bit of a hard time in her past, kind of keeping things together with her family, being a single mother. She's an artist. She makes like really cool things out of road maps, like roses and stuff. But she's kind of got it together now. She lives in this little tiny cottage on the lake or ocean. I'm not sure where. It's in East Yorkshire. So, ocean, I guess? I don't know. She looks outside and when it's storming one day and finds this man on her lakefront, oceanfront beach property who is just standing in the rain for hours, not doing anything. So she approaches him and he has no idea who he is, where he is, what's happening. So she's kind of battling with whether or not she's going to take him in and help him because she doesn't know him and she doesn't know if her children are going to be safe. So she does end up helping him though. Also, in the same timeline, we're following, in Surrey, we're following 21-year-old Lily Monrose. She's a newlywed and just moved to Surrey from the Ukraine after she got married to her husband, and he went to work one day and never came back. And so we're following her as she kind of tries to figure out what's going on and talks to the police when they tell her that her husband doesn't and never has existed. Then in our prior timeline, we're going back to 1993 where we're following a family on the same beach in East Yorkshire where they're on vacation. It's a mom and a dad, a son and a daughter. And the son is like 18, the daughter's like 16 or 15. And they meet this kid, Mark, who seems really charming and tries to get to be friendly with the family. And he turns out to be crazy. So I don't think that's a spoiler because this whole time, basically, we're trying to figure out which one is this guy that doesn't know who he is. Is he the bad kid or is he the good kid? Is he this lady's husband or is he not? So it wasn't as thrilling as your typical thriller, but it was so suspenseful. And I was just the whole time I was just riveted and just continuously trying to work it out in my brain and trying to beat them, trying to the catch to figure out who it was. Yeah. that's where I'm going to leave it with that. The next book I read this month is called The Future for Curious People. This is by Gregory Sherry. I gave it a 3.75. I'm doing quarter stars now because I joined Storygraph and I love it. So if it's on Goodreads, I will round up. It's a fluffy, slightly sci-fi romance, basically. But it has a 3.49 on Goodreads. And this reminds me of The One in the sense where it's like this near future where we have this technology where you can hook up to this machine and think of a person's name and a romantic interest and see if you are still with this person in the future, what your life will look like in 10, 15, 20, 40 years, whatever you pick. But the catch is you have to have met this person and you have to know their name in order to put it into the machine. You go to an envisionist, which is basically like a doctor who tells you what your future looks like with these people. So we're following Evelyn, who is in her mid-20s. She's a librarian, which we love, of course. You know, book lovers love talking about books, so automatically I'm in for that. It's set in Baltimore. So Evelyn's kind of obsessed with this new tech and she just keeps going back for more and back for more and back for more. And the doctors warn this can be addictive. But any person she can think of that she's met in her life, she sees what her future would be like if she was with them. And she just hasn't found the right one yet, but she's kind of obsessing over it and she's a little bit anxious because she considers herself a feminist. If someone calls her out saying, well, that's not feminist of you to just keep obsessing over who your future mate's gonna be, why don't you just be happy by yourself? And so she's struggling with the idea of what a feminist is and what's the harm and, you know, trying to see this, trying to find the right guy and the right person. And she looks at it as an analytical experiment, kind of. Then we have Godfrey, who used to be real flaky and kind of go through girls all the time, but he's now been with his current girlfriend for I think a year or two, and he's gonna propose. In fact, he does propose, but she tells him that before she accepts or not, she wants them to go to an envisionist and see what their future looks like together. He thinks it's total BS. He thinks it's super hokey. He's very sarcastic in general and kind of quirky, and he's a fun character. I enjoyed him. But so this book in general is it's a dual perspective, so you get both of their perspectives, Evelyn and Godfrey. Oh, Godfrey's also struggling with the fact that his bio dad was apparently, his mom tells him, was a real ladies' man as well. So he always thinks that that's in his genes and he can't settle down with anyone. But anyway, so he goes to the same envisionist as Evelyn and they cross paths, and then the story continues. That's all I'll tell you. I will say don't listen to this on audio if you have the physical book, because the female narrator, it was narrated by a male and a female, which is nice, but the female narrator, the way she voiced the character made it sound really high-pitched and kind of like a little girl, and so it really bothered me, and it made it sound like really YA, when I don't think this is. I think it's actually either new adult or adult, because they're in their mid-20s. So pass on the audiobook. Get the physical book if you can. 3 more. Almost there, you guys. Almost there. This one was a reread that I love so incredibly much, and it is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. Off the bat, can we get a confirmation on how to pronounce this woman's name? Because some people say Gillian and some people say Gillian, and I don't know who to believe. Let me know. Like I said, it's a reread. It's a 5-star read for me. It's got a 3.93 on Goodreads, which I don't know how it doesn't have a 4 or higher, because this book is amazing and incredible. It's probably my favorite of hers. Although I feel like I've read Gone Girl, but I may not have. That may be one I have to read still, because I feel like I've read it and I know I've seen the movie. Anyway, that's a discussion for another day. So we're following Libby Day. This is, again, a dual timeline. Libby is the sole survivor of a massacre on her own family perpetrated by her brother in 1985 in Kinnicky, Kansas. She was 7 years old at the time, and now in present day, she is in her early 30s, and she's very pessimistic and angry at the world. She's admittedly selfish and angry, and she's morally ambiguous, veering towards villainous, really. she uses people. Ever since she was a kid, people would give her money because of the tragedy that befell her, and she kind of fell into this comfort of just not ever getting a job, not ever having to take any responsibility for anything. But now the money is wearing out. Wearing out? It's getting used up. It's running out, that's it. And people care more about other children who survived tragedies. She's not having that income that she used to have, and so she has to figure out a way to make money. She gets approached by Lyle, who is the treasurer of the Kill Club. And it's this group of murderinos basically who get together and discuss cases, try to solve cases, high profile massacres, murders, things of that nature. And he hires her to come and be like a guest, a special celebrity guest at one of their meetings. This leads them down this rabbit hole of investigations where she decides she's gonna investigate whether or not her brother actually killed her family. Even though she testified when she was 7 and she feels like in her heart of hearts he was the one that did it, things start coming to her attention that make her question that. Her and Lyle go on an adventure. She has so much character growth in this. Gillian Flynn's writing is so incredible. Her similes, her metaphors are just so top-notch and beautifully written. The foreshadowing. Oh, I didn't tell you. We flash back throughout this narrative. We flash back to 1985 from the third-person perspective of her mom and her brother. One chapter from her mom, next chapter from her brother. So we're seeing the nights, I'm doing a terrible job. We're seeing the events of the night play out, 20 years later, one step at a time as we're following the narrative of present day Libby. I don't know if that makes any sense. Anyway. Oh, we're also exploring this idea of satanic panic and how in the 80s satanic panic was just like a huge thing where they think everybody's molesting the babies and everybody's worshiping the devil, and so this played a huge part in this massacre. There were just so many twists and so many red herrings that I absolutely fell for, and I just think it's beautiful and amazing, and the end is so good, and I absolutely love this book, and you should read it. Next, I read The Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and this I did as a buddy read with my friend James at James's Space. I will link her page below. Go check her out. She's amazing. She is beauty. She is grace.
She's beauty and she's grace. She's queen of 50 states. Elegance and taste. She's Miss United States.
Anyway, we read this together. Oh, I actually have this one. Here it is. We read this together, and she's still kind of finishing it up, so I'm not gonna get into all of my full opinion of this because we really haven't had too much of a chance to talk about it yet. But I finished it, and I gave it a 3.5 stars. 3.5 stars. It's got a 4.04 on Goodreads. It's gonna be Leigh Bardugo's adult mystery thriller. It's kind of a dark academia type thing where we're following Galaxy, or Alex Stern, and she's had a really tough past. Oh, did I tell you, by the way, Dark Places, extremely disturbing, trigger warnings, this as well. Okay, Dark Places got me, and I like disturbing stuff, and it disturbed the crap out of me. Anyway, back to the present time. Okay, we're talking about Ninth House. This one also has some trigger warnings for rape and among other things. God, I haven't told you any trigger warnings. Look up the trigger warnings for all of these. Probably. Maybe not the romances. Those are probably fine. Anyway, secret society at Yale. There are 8 houses of these secret societies, and then we have Lethe, which is the 9th house, which is supposed to keep all of the magics from these other houses in check. It's basically like an internal governing house where they're watching out for all of the other houses and making sure people are not being manipulated by these magics. The politics within the system of Yale are, we have all these rich kids, they want to do what they want to do. Lethe needs funding, and so, some things get slipped under the rug, and that's the reality of how that shit is. This one is darker than I expected. There is one scene that kind of took me off guard a little bit. We're following Galaxy's perspective as well as Darlington. Darlington's her kind of mentor figure, and his perspective is from last spring, I think, and then her perspective is winter. His perspective is from before, and hers is present. I don't know how much time has passed in between. Not much time, though, like a season. The way it's written is basically Darlington's not there in our present timeline, and we have to keep going back to his chapters to figure out what happened to him and where did he go. And meanwhile, Alex, who was plucked from the dregs of society, she was into drugs and all of this shit, and really deep in a bad situation. She woke up one night in a room full of dead people, and we have to also figure out what happened that night as we go throughout the story. But basically, Alex can see dead people, and everybody else at Lethe wants to see dead people. They call them Greys, but they have to take a special elixir, which if taken too many times will end up killing them. So she has one foot up, and so they recruit her to come to Lethe when they find out about her, and she is there to help them investigate. And then there is a murder that happens on campus in the present timeline with Alex, but she doesn't know what to do because Darlington's not there, and so she's trying to navigate through that. She's the kind that's really daring and pushing the status quo and putting herself into danger. Yeah, I mean, it was a little info dumpy at the beginning. I did listen to it on audio, which the audio was good, but I wish I was able to take notes because I was really confused off the bat about like all of the terminology and the societies and the secrets and all of the craziness and the magic systems and all of that. Yeah, like it was good. I liked it better than her YA stuff, I think. But overall, like I'm a little strung out on Leigh Bardugo right now, and I probably will not be reading any more of her books anytime in the near future. Okay, we're down to the last book. Lastly, I have The Chalk Man by CJ Tudor. So this one is also a dual timeline. If you're seeing a theme here, maybe I shouldn't have pointed this out. Anyway, I gave it 4 stars. It's got a 3.73 on Goodreads, and we're following this group of kids, and it's like very much 1980s friend group vibes. It gave me, even though it's not 80s, it's more 90s, it gave me Sandlot vibes, but no sports and much darker. When they're kids, they're like 10, 12, around that age, and just the kind of freewheeling gang of kids going out and summertime and, you know, having a blast, but then things go very wrong. These kids decide to send messages to each other in chalk. They each have their own color chalk, and so they know like who it's from, and they make like little chalk men out of them, and they say like they point them in certain directions and guide them, tell them where to go. They have a secret language, but then people start dying, and there are images of these chalk men being left with them. And then we flash forward to 30 years later in present time. It's supposed to be 2016, and we're following Eddie, who's the main kid, and he's an English teacher now. He's still living in his mom's house in the same small town. Then people start dying in the present, and we're trying to connect, see what's going on. This was really well written, really well written. It wasn't like a made me gasp out loud type of thriller, but it was a perfectly paced, very suspenseful. The pacing of this was like just like a steady heartbeat. It just kept me going throughout the whole book. I read it in one day. You cannot trust anyone in this story. CJ Tudor does this thing that I also like in Sarah J. Maas's writing, although it's, you know, different genres, where they're just placing little, I want to say eggshells. What is that word? It's not, God damn it, I can't remember. But little secret hints here and there, and then you don't realize till the very end that that was purposeful, and it's just very well played. Well played, CJ Tudor. I just thought this was a really great example of this type of story, and very smart and thoughtfully written while also thrilling and engaging, and I highly recommend it. Also, the voice between Eddie's childhood voice and his adult voice, and the way it's written is so distinctive. It's cool to see something that happens when you're a child and see it through the lens of a child and the things that they pick up on, the things that they notice. And then you get to also switch that perspective and see it from the same kid as an adult, looking back on his memories of that time and the things he takes from that he didn't necessarily grasp when he was a kid. So just kind of that ability to have that insight into this character from a different developmental stage in life, and to be able to portray that in writing, I thought was wonderfully done. And that's it. Oh my God, I have to be done. I cannot believe I've been talking for so long. My throat hurts. I'm done. If you guys are still with me, bless you. You're the best. And I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go now. If you haven't yet, consider subscribing if you enjoyed this, if you connect with anything that I'm reading and you maybe have the same taste, you wanna see what else I have going on in this crazy world. In this crazy world. I don't know what's happening. What is happening? Listen, if you like it, push the button, you know, like it. If you like it. Push the button, do the things. Okay, you know what to do. I'm gonna go. You guys, life is short, so read Riley. I will see you next time. Cheers. Hello, my bookish friends. How are you? No, I still don't like it. Better or worse? Oh, I think it's worse. Maybe if I put it higher up. I hate you and I love you, green light.